I want to get into this story because this one has really taken off recently. There is a lot to talk about in this story as well. And I don't even know how to address all the facets of it right out of the gates. But immigration has been a big, big issue in Canada. And not only has immigration become a big issue in Canada, but it's brought along with it other negative effects. And those other negative effects are what I kind of want to focus on today, because we all understand if there are too many people in the country and there's not enough homes, that you're going to have a housing bubble. If there's too many people and there's not enough healthcare, you're going to have healthcare shortages. If there's too many people and there's not enough any of resources, that's not a good thing. We can all understand that. But now we're getting into a territory where other things, social issues, are happening because of it. And it's really dragging down a lot of other people. So today I want to introduce two guests. I'm going to introduce one at a time here. First and foremost, you guys all know him. He's been on the show before. We've talked many, many times. And that is my good friend, Darshan Maharaja. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. And I'm looking forward to this conversation because you always bring such great stuff to the table.
Oh, thank you, Clyde. Thank you for having me on again.
Well, absolutely. And for everybody that doesn't know, you can find you on Twitter. What's your Twitter handle?
Theophanes Rex.
Theophanes Rex. And you've been reporting on this extensively over the, I want to say months, but it's been years now. So much attention has been coming to this way before any of this stuff was ever hitting the airwaves, before the news media was even talking about it. You've been talking about it. You've been on the show several times. And I'm not trying to pat myself on the back or pat you on the back on this, but I think the shows that we've done have brought a lot of awareness to this, and we've seen actual changes implemented in Canada over this. So again, thank you so much.
Oh, Clyde, the first video that we did, I think about a week after that, Minister Miller announced a reduction in the number of international students because that video absolutely blew up. It was like at 160K views and thousands of replies. So yeah, it's important for people to speak up. That is why I'm saying in today's day and age, the power is no longer exclusively with the traditional power basis. Individuals have a lot of power. We can leverage it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then my other guest tonight, is new to me. Just met him this past week. He's been doing great work back and forth from India and Canada, and he's got a channel of his own. He's been doing his podcast. Fantastic work on his end, and I'd love to welcome to the show tonight, Kushal Mahra. Am I pronouncing that correct?
It's Mehra, Kushal Mehra. Hey, Clyde. Thanks for having me over. Namaste,
Absolutely.
No, sir.
And so I was able to talk to you briefly this week. I was at work and there was wrenches banging and doing all that stuff. And we got to have a short conversation about your motivations. But you're in Canada part-time. You live in India and then you also partly live in Canada. It's a whole family long relation story that goes about that. But you're mainly India-based and you come to Canada for extensive periods of time. And you've been noticing a dramatic change in the way things have been going in Canada, and you've been talking about it on your podcast. Can you give a little explanation of that?
Yeah, so I first came to Canada in the year 2001. I was a student at York University. I was done pretty much studying by 2002 and went back to India. Got married to a Canadian in 2007. Usually people end up living in Canada. I took a Canadian to India. We were living there happily, but then in 2022, a family tragedy happened. So we had to decide to move here for half of the year. So I'm half of the year I live in Canada, half of the year I live in India. I have a podcast in India. It's called the Charvak Podcast. Charvak is a school of philosophy in India. It is a materialistic school. I am a hardcore materialist, a skeptic, I don't like to call myself an atheist, but that's the closest thing that would be called. Although I have just written a book called Gnostic, Why I Am Not an Atheist, because I believe I'm not one. I'm different from atheists. And yeah, my podcast has been there. I mean, if you ask Indians, they'll know about me. And it's a well known podcast in India. And I've been following the immigration discussion over here. And I agree with many things that people say when it comes to immigration in Canada, disagree with many things. I think a lot of the discussion over here is just one nice excuse for a segment of racists to hurl a lot of muck on the easy target right now, and that target seems to be international students. I'm actually a hawk when it comes to immigration. I believe immigration should be way lesser than even a lot of Canadian conservatives recommend. I'm actually my views on immigration are very different. I believe immigration is a privilege, not a right. Whether it's immigration to India, whether it's immigration to Canada, whether it's immigration to the United States of America, I believe it's a privilege, not a right. It should be based on the needs of the host nation inviting people. It should not be based on the needs of the person wanting to go there. So I don't understand, but I believe it's convenient right now to push the immigration failure on the shoulder of Indians, which I find deeply offensive. I believe it's the failure of the Canadian system. It's a failure of Canadian politicians, and it's the failure of the average Canadian population. And the only reason people are making a noise right now is because the Canadian economy is not doing well. Until the economy was doing well, nobody gave a damn how many people came, how many people went, what was happening. It's
Mhm.
when the economy failed, when it's the classic NIMBY, NIMBY, not in my own backyard. As long as it was not in their own backyard, hitting their own tummy, they didn't care. I mean, there are many things that can be broken down. So I find it quite hilarious actually, because I am the original immigration hawk. So, it's kind of entertaining for me to look at Canadians whine about it.
So you nailed it right on the head there. I think a lot of this is scapegoating. I think a lot of people are looking for somebody to blame. They're angry. They have good reason to be angry. I mean, there's no reason we shouldn't be well, I mean, a first world nation. There's no reason we shouldn't be a wealthy nation. We have so many resources here in Canada. There are so many businesses that would love to come here, operate, and but yet Canadians are not doing so well, and we haven't done this poorly. We haven't had such negative growth in a long time, and people are looking for what's the reason for this. They're seeing a lot more Indian people around them, or they're hearing from other people. They're seeing stuff on social media, so then it becomes a scapegoat thing instead of like, why are there so many Indian people? Who are these Indian people? What is the story behind this? And what I found very interesting is the pushback from the Indo-Canadian movement, or the Indo-Canadian, I guess, group of people in Canada. And Darshan, you've been talking about this quite a bit, saying that, for the longest time, Indo-Canadians were the model of what a good immigrant should be. And explain, why did that change?
There are two sides to this. One is, as I have said in an old podcast, extreme leftism will boost racism, because if there are things happening and no, you prevent people from speaking against it, then all that pent up frustration is going to come out as racism. That is number one. Number two, the screening processes that made sure that the immigrants who were coming to Canada were already compatible with living in a modern Western society, those were thrown out the window. So, I mean, there are multiple reasons being advanced for this, saying, provincial premiers cut funding for post secondary education sector thing, this, that. There are labor shortages. I am of the view that even if the unemployment rate hits 50%, they'll be talking about labor shortages. So, these are the holy cows of public debate in Canada that one could not challenge. At the same time, because we have done away with all the screening mechanisms, the kind of people who are coming are very different, and there is also a wide spectrum there. Today I learned that in some cases that is because the family feels, the parents feel that the kid is getting into crime and he will bring shame to the family, so they will ship him off, and usually it's a him. Rarely it would be a her, but they'll ship him off to Canada. So now by default we are getting someone who is not going to fit in well. Then there are people who, young people, and who are well meaning, but if they have bought a job via LMIA, then they are depriving someone who is a Canadian and who is deserving of that job. And this is becoming the most public face of the excess that we are having now, which is that every place you go, no matter how big the city, how small the town, customer facing job will be held by a young Indian. So it becomes unavoidable, not just noticeable, unavoidable. And I said this before summer began, that when people realize that their teenage kids cannot get jobs because those jobs have all been sold to Indians, this is going to create a backlash, and we are seeing that backlash now. Just yesterday I heard that at the CNE Expo there was this recruitment phase, because Expo will begin on 16th. It runs for 2 weeks. There are like 3,400 jobs and 37,000 applicants. I mean, the number of applicants was double from last year. So, when you see this kind of imbalance, it's going to create uh, kind of a mad competition for resources. Here, the resource being jobs. In other context, it can be a rental apartment. Now, I'll tell you something interesting. Back in maybe late 70s or around 1980, I was in Mumbai, and there's this great documentary called The Ape and the Super Ape. It's I think made somewhere in Sweden or somewhere, but it's dubbed in English. It was for some weird reason running in a movie theater. And for even more weird reason, I bought a ticket and watched it. So in that, there are several experiments they have shown, including one where there are two identical enclosures in which they have put those lab mice. And in one enclosure, there's only like 4 or 5, and in the other, there's like 40 or 50. And the behavior of the lab mice in that other enclosure is completely different. They are constantly fighting, even killing each other, because there is that intense competition for the limited resources. So, when I said that this is going to create social problems, not just economic ones, I think, falling back on that experience of watching that documentary. And we are going to unfortunately see it increase, because I don't see much action in actually taking care of the problem.
Now I couldn't help but snicker, have a laugh. I want to show it to Indians, and you replaced Holy Grail with Holy Cow, in the just it made me laugh. But so I wanted to throw in a super chat from a fan here. Milady Loves Cats with a $50 super chat says, "Good evening, Clyde and all. Just because I love what you do, missed a few lives lately, but loved last week's panel, and this is why I wanted to bring on more discussion. Thank you so much, Milady Loves Cats. Now moving on to this, because okay, right now, yeah, there's a lot of social problems that are happening in Canada, and it's a multifaceted one. So I think there's a few different ones that we can get to. It's a bunch to go through. Now, the first one, of course, is, well, we'll see it here. This is the scandal that's happening right now, and we've heard about it. The poops on the beach, people pooping in public. This has become a big issue for a lot of Canadians, and it's because it's something that can be memed. It will really go far. It'll really go places. And recently there was a TikToker that's been talking about this story, and she's been talking about it at Wasaga Beach, talking about what happened there. People are pooping on the beach, or people are reporting that people are pooping on the beach of Indian descent, and that people well, at the end of the day, she was reporting on this. She got a visit from the RCMP not because they wanted to get information on who she saw pooping on the beach, but that it sounded racist to them and they were worried about that. A lot of people are worried with this whole Bill C-63 coming through, crackdown on people's speech, freedom of speech. Anything that can be said to foment hatred or perceived to foment hatred could wind you in house arrest, have your possessions confiscated from you, ankle bracelet around your ankle, this kind of thing. Now, my big question here is, where is this all coming from? We've had Indians in Canada for the longest time. It's never been a problem, people pooping on the beaches and all of this. So what is this phenomena happening? Is it a real thing that's happening? Is this just people making up these stories? Or is it a mix of the both, people sensationalizing it, but yet this is also happening? What's the story here?
Well, I think, first of all, as for Wasaga Beach, there hasn't been any evidence presented. Then there was this photo that went viral, ostensibly of an elderly person relieving his bowels right in front of a convenience store or some kind of a commercial establishment. Then there was a controversy around whether that was a Photoshop or not, etc. So, the point is that while we are discussing all this, the real issue, which is excessive immigration, I even call it out of control immigration, that is not being addressed. And by excessive, I don't mean just the numbers, but also the screening mechanism. Because if you leave it, free for all, then you are going to have problems like this. Whether this was actual problem or not, problems like this are going to happen. Like just this morning, I made this discovery that people who land in Canada and then make a refugee claim, they are not counted in the number of temporary residents of Canada. Now, we already have 2.8 million temporary residents, which is 6.8% of the total population, whereas the norm is to have around 1 million. So we have almost triple the population of temporary residents, which is causing all sorts of stresses on housing, on job availability, etc. And on top of it, now we have another group of people who are not counted in temporary residents because they are said to be having no status. So these are the excesses of immigration policy that we need to look at. See, in the past 10 years, between 2013 and 2023, the number of refugee applications being filed every year went up by 1,300%.
1,300%.
1,300%. And in 2024, we are going to probably have a number that is 50% higher than 2023. So we'll be looking at something like a 2,000% increase over 11 years. What does it mean in terms of public expenditure, in terms of housing, in terms of every other piece of infrastructure? I think it was only today in the morning that Blacklocks tweeted, giving the number of hotel rooms that we are paying for as taxpayers for refugees or refugee claimants, right? It takes years and years for each claim to be finalized, whether accepted or rejected. In the meantime, the person may have got married here, they may have got children here. Now, if you deport them, then you are separating the family. These are the important questions that are being sidetracked by
Well,
someone.
that's the misnomer with this whole idea of temporary status, right? Like, there's no such thing as temporary immigration at the end of the day, is there? Like, unless you're like actually going over for work, for work. We have a lot of people from Latin America that come up to Canada and they pick fruit and they go right back home. They're happy to go home. That's not their intent. But we're using what's supposed to be temporary worker stuff, workers, students, all of this stuff, and using it as a back door for immigration, and that's not good. But I want to get back to the cultural thing, because we can talk about the numbers there. But my big question is, because a lot of people are throwing this charge out that in India, this is a big problem, the defecating on the streets, the not taking care of stuff. And people hear about this. We hear about campaigns. There was a song that they made, Don't Go Poo in the Loo or something. It was some song that went out on Indian television. But India is a huge place. So I'm trying to think, like, why is it that this is something that's largely become a popular issue? Krishal, do you, like, you actually come from a close place to where a lot of the current newcomers are the Punjab region, correct?
I'm ethnically from Punjab. I'm born and raised in Mumbai. I'm more Marathi Gujarati than I'm Punjabi, to be very honest. I'm
Oh, okay.
I'm a 43-year-old man, and I must have gone only 5 times to Punjab in my entire life. I really.
Oh, well, then that you won't be able to answer my question, because my
Oh, I know
question
the
was gonna
state very
be-
well. I still have immediate family over there. I know the state very well. I follow the politics of the state very well. I know the culture very well because I am ethnically Punjabi. But no, I want to take this poop subject head on. Like I
Okay.
can speak. The problem with social media is that you can twist an anecdote and make it sound like anything. Now, I can share you a link from 2019. This is a CBC. I mean, it's as Canadian as it gets. This article says pooping in the Yukon River. Were the Indians doing it then? In 2019, nobody talked about it then. Hey, I can share at least 50 such anecdotes. All right. I can share 50 such anecdotes. If we're going to play the anecdote game, right? So like you hurl an anecdote on me, I hurl an anecdote. I'm not saying you as in you, Clyde. I'm just saying
Oh, of course
you,
not.
the metaphorical you. This is the metaphorical you that is, I mean, going after like the entire incident was so funny for me is because, first of all, I just want to put this on record that I did not share the image of that old man. I did not share any video of that old man is because, you know what, I was in my culture, I was taught to, not to be bad to elders. I'm going to say this straight up. I'm not justifying what happened there. I find it disgusting. But let me be straight up honest. If this was a old white man, a old black man, I still wouldn't have shared the photo. It's an old man. Let old people be. That's how my parents raised me. If it's an old white man, that's an old Chinese man, a Japanese man, a black man, an Indian man. If they do something wrong, my culture taught me to, it's okay. Yeah, I find it problematic. I'm not going to create a ruckus about an old man. I don't care which religion, race, caste, creed they belong to. That's point number one. Is there any data by the government of Canada about which race and which religion is pooping on the streets all across Canada? Can we analyze the long-term data of Canada? Because if we're making judgment calls about communities, give me data. I have some data points to share. If I was to, I tweeted out criminal data of Canada, of United Kingdom, of the United States of America. I belong to the Hindu community. I'm going to talk about it. Guess who's the least violent community in all these 3 countries? All these 3 countries. It's the Hindu community. They're the least violent, the most educated, the richest, have the best jobs, the most stable families. They barely divorce. They have the most stable families. And you find one random incident and then you try to, listen, if we're going to make judgment calls on communities, listen, if anybody follows me on Twitter, they'll be like, oh my God, he goes hard at Indians. I go hard at my own people, but I'll defend them where they deserve to be defended. Listen, the point is the economy is bad. They just found a random brown dude pooping. And after that, I must have seen 20 pictures of white dudes pooping, white dudes shoving a gas rod up his ass, jerking off on a gas station. I don't know what all I've seen. 2 white girls pooping in the Calgary Stampede. I've seen so many videos. For the record, I did not share a single video. For me, because I look at them as human beings. I don't look at them as subjects so that I can insult communities. For me, whether you're white, black, brown, it doesn't matter. We're all the same. We're all human beings. I will
I will happily raise my hand and say, if there is any statistical data to show Indians poop more on the street than any other race in Canada, is there a poop map which has a brown poop map?
I just have I have a hard time with this because I mean, it's funny. It's hard not to just laugh at the story, right? And of course, it goes viral because of the content of the story. Everybody loves a toilet joke. I mean, really, at the end of the day, that's what it is.
But do you know what the funny bit about this whole thing was? I still remember. I'm not going to take the name of my friend. In fact, I'm at the house of that friend right now in Toronto, and I called her in the morning. This shit hit the roof scenario happened literally, and I called her. And I told her, I was like, listen, this has to be the stupidest thing I've seen in my life. A bunch of racists of white skin and a bunch of Khalistanis are fighting each other. Like, these are the two most unintelligible groups they are a match made in heaven, and I just want to see who stoops lower, right? This is like a match made in heaven. Tweedledee has met Tweedledum, and I was just laughing. And the best part is, one person says this photo is fake, and some random people are doing a forensic search of whether the photo of a person pooping is real. I was like, guys, don't you have better things to do? You're analyzing poop photos. I mean, come on. What is happening? It's so stupid. It's so stupid. Everything is stupid. Like, is this even a country? Like, we don't even do this. On the India question, yes, India had an open defecation problem. And I'm someone who's actually worked towards it. I've worked in rural India. There was something in 2014 that the Honorable Prime Minister of India, who is the current Prime Minister of India, Mr. Narendra Modi, he started something which was called in Hindi the Swachh Bharat Mission, which means the Clean India Mission. Before he took over, India had a 52% open defecation. Now I'm giving you data. People want data, I'll give you data. Well, that has been reduced to less than 10% in India. It was not a cultural problem. It was an infrastructure problem. And myself, I have at least helped build more than 50,000 such washrooms across urban India and rural India, along with other members of parliament, members of legislative assemblies. My record is all out in the open. You can just go look it up. We've shown that. And these things are there. If you Google, malaria cases have been plummeting in India because of the cleanliness drive organized by the Honorable Prime Minister of India, till the extent, sometimes my doctor friends in Bombay, they joke. I was like, man, we're having it bad. I was like, why? What happened? Malaria cases have dropped. Our hospitals are going empty. It's just a joke we have in India. It's like things are there problems in India? Yes, but it's not a cultural issue. It's an infrastructure issue. Please try and understand this. Like, and if Indians had a criminal bent, then the data of your police, this is Stats Canada data. I'm not making this data up. This is Canadian government data. And it literally puts Indian at the bottommost percentile. Even they have Sikhs and Hindus separately. Hindus are 0.3%. Sikhs are 0.8%. Yes, we need to talk about that too, that when Sikhs are 300,000 less than Hindus in absolute numbers in Canada, approximately 300,000 less than Hindus, why are they 3 times more in violent crime? Well, the Sikh community leaders can answer that. I, as a Hindu, don't have to answer that question. That is for the Sikh community in Canada to answer that. But even if I combine them together and put them as Indians together, which is the fashionable thing to do today, while it's funny, the Sikhs in Canada say, don't call us Indian. We find it very insulting. It's very entertaining how everybody's fighting over here. Yeah, you should see some of the Twitter comments. Very entertaining. But even if I club them together, statistically, the Indians are the least criminally minded people in all of Canada, out of all races put together. So if the data doesn't match up, so I guess the data lies too, because that data is provided by the conservative government and the liberal government. So I guess all of them are liars.
So I got this. I just pulled this out because this pertains to what you were saying. And this is from Vancouver is Awesome. It's a website. This is from back in 2023 when they were talking about whose job it is to clean up human poop in Vancouver. Now, this was a problem back then, and it was never an Indian problem.
Yeah.
It was just basically like essentially people out on the street were defecating, and it's become an increasing problem in Canada. It's in Canada at large. In fact, even like places like San Diego have largely noted tremendous amounts of more cases of human poop being reported, and it has nothing to do with any particular ethnicity. So, I mean, I guess we can wipe that one and toss it and hit the flush on that
Hey,
story.
even the Toronto Public Library, my dear friend, even the Toronto Public Library did not spare anyone. Look at this article where the Toronto Public Library is talking.
Oh, let me pull it up here. I'll just
Look at this. Scoop the poop.
Toronto Public Library.
Yeah,
Oh, wow, this is great.
2017. Yeah, well, who was doing it then? Like, it makes no sense. This entire controversy makes no sense to me.
Yeah, October 2017. So yeah, it's not a new issue, but because it's something that's, like I said, it's salacious and it's something that can go viral. So we're talking about
and it's
that.
easy to
right?
hate on someone, right? It's easy to hate on someone. See, when you have a target, right? When you have a target, then it's easy to attack, and then you can not talk about the real. The real issues are the ones that Darshan spoke about. Once again, why are so many people from India coming to Canada? I live half the time in India, and even I don't support it. Even I don't support it.
That really is the question, and nobody's been able to provide like a really good answer to that question. And let me get to that just after I hit this super chat here from David Lazowski for $20. Says people need to remember, we only ever see the bad stuff. We shouldn't group everyone together over something that a few people are doing. We need to create allies with everyone that shares the same vision for Canada as us. And I couldn't agree with that more. Got Mr. Roscoe Pico, member for 21 months, says, walk down Hastings Street. You can watch 3 different cultures poop on the sidewalk. it's everybody. and thanks to KST4XX for the $1 super chat. Really appreciate that. But yeah, the question here is, we have an immigration issue, and that's a problem. And it's not about the pooping thing aside. Let's forget about that. But the immigration issue, one question I've never gotten a good answer for is why so many people from one particular region of one particular country. Why is that?
I would like to answer that. I don't know if Darshanji will agree with me, but I'll take first dibs at this as a Punjabi, ethnic Punjabi. I'll take first dibs at this. And Darshanji smile says it all. So I'll tell you, it's a scam. There is nothing else to say. Canadian politicians, whether provincial or federal, they are both involved. They're all involved in this. Some of them. I'm not going to take names. You talk to me offline, I'll give you names. Because I don't want to be sued by people, and I don't have time. I don't want to spend 6 months in Canada fighting cases. So, but I'll give you names, and this is a serious issue. Then you have the university complex. Listen, if you have 70 diploma colleges in Brampton alone, you know you have a scam going on. Listen, I studied in York University, Canada. There was no such thing at that time. We had Ryerson, we had Humber, we had a few colleges here and there. We didn't have this kind of stuff. This is a scam. And you know who came up with this genius idea? It was all your politicians and Canadians living over here. The victims in this are those students who are paying 4 times, 5 times the fee. Those students in India who have been duped by Indian companies in cahoots with Canadian companies, and these Canadian companies who are buttering the pockets of your politicians over here. It's easy to blame the international student. Don't give them a visa. They'll not come here. They are only coming here when they're giving a visa, right? Are they coming here swimming and going to a southern border and saying, let us in? No, they're not doing that. They're actually flying in, buying a ticket, and it is all done in one province in India. I have no shame in saying this. It's all happening in Punjab. It's all happening in Punjab. And look at how this scam runs, right? There is a video. Clyde, because it's in Punjabi, all of you missed it. He's a member of parliament. He's a known separatist. He's never allowed to step foot inside the parliament in India. but he won an election. He lost the election this time. I'm talking about Simranjeet Singh Maan. He
Got you.
gives letters. So let's say, Clyde, you're a young boy from Punjab who's come on an international student visa. Now you're like, hang on, I need to become a land and immigrant here. How do I scam the system? So the immigration agent in Canada, who's a Canadian passport holder, not an Indian passport holder, is going to give you the suggestion, get a letter from a member of Parliament of India that states you're being tortured in India. So this member of parliament is known to give these letters. By the way, how do we know this? He literally said that in an interview to a television in Punjabi. All of you missed it is because it was in Punjabi. Who was screaming? People like Darshan and I were screaming. I was like, hang on, listen to what is happening. He takes that letter. Now the Canadian immigration company goes to the Canadian immigration office, says, look, here is a member of Parliament of India saying he's being tortured. Then who certifies the torture? A Canadian leader in Canada. Yes, I know the member of Parliament of India is saying the right thing. And these are all in it together. Everybody's getting paid off.
You forgot one thing. That fellow, that MP in India, is actually charging money.
Yeah, 1,000 to 5,000 Canadian.
Yeah.
That is unreal.
Yeah,
so
you buy.
Wait,
So
let
they're
me,
coming
let me show you a
over.
clip of I'll send you the link before somebody accuses you that you're making it up.
Yeah.
I'll send you
Okay,
that
yes, send me the link. But so essentially, people are saying that they're being tortured, and therefore they should come to Canada under what, a refugee status?
Yes, sir. Wait, I'm sending it to you. This video
This is
with
mind blowing.
subtitles.
If the member of parliament in India has the capacity to say that this person's being tortured, isn't there something that the government of India can do to stop them from being tortured?
They get the letter once they're in Canada. What the government in India? What is the government of India going to do? It's an independent.
No, but shouldn't the
member
government of
parliament.
Canada say, well, go back to India and talk to the government? They clearly know your case. They should help you out.
Yeah, that normal governments do that. Canadian governments don't do that. That's where the answer lies, because even the Canadian member of parliament is in it. You think the $5,000 is going alone to the Indian member of parliament? It's a racket. It's a racket of immigration. Just look at this link. It has subtitles in English, and play this. And then
Okay,
you
I'll
guys
pop
will
this
realize what a
on.
scam it is.
Okay, let's get this on. So this is subtitles in English here, right here. Okay, cool.
ਮਾਨ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਇੱਕ ਗੱਲ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਹੋਰ ਬੜੀ ਚੱਲਦੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਮਾਨ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਕੋਲ ਇੱਕ ਲੈਟਰ ਆ ਉਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਬੰਦੇ ਪੱਕੇ ਹੋ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਨੇ ਇਹ ਕਿੰਨੀ ਕੀ ਏਜ ਚਾਹੀਏ ਆ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਹੋ ਲੈਟਰ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਉੱਥੇ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਐਕਸਟ੍ਰੈਡੀਸ਼ਨ ਲੈਣੀ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਨੇ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੇ ਉੱਥੇ ਜਾ ਕੇ
ਜਿਹੜੇ ਬੰਦੇ ਮੁਸੀਬਤ ਚ ਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਚਿੱਠੀ ਦੇ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਹੈ ਉਹਨਾਂ
ਤੁਸੀਂ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਦਿੰਦੇ
ਹਾਂ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਦੇ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਪੱਕੇ ਹੋ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਵਿਚਾਰੇ
ਕਿੰਨੇ ਕੁ ਬੰਦੇ ਇਹੋ ਜਿਹੇ ਪੱਕੇ ਹੋਏ ਨੇ
ਪਤਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਿੰਨੇ ਤਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਮੈਂ ਗਿਣੇ ਪਰ ਇਹ 50,000 ਤਾਂ ਹੋ ਗਏ ਹੋਣੇ
50,000.
ਉਹਦੀ ਕੋਈ ਫੀਸ ਤਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗੀ
ਫੀਸ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਚਲਾਉਣ ਦੇ ਲਈ
ਅੱਛਾ
ਹਾਂ
ਪਾਰਟੀ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਫੰਡ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈਗਾ
ਹਾਂ
ਉਹ ਲੈਣੇ ਉਹਦੇ ਲਈ
ਹਾਂ ਬਸ
ਕਿੰਨੀ ਫੀਸ ਲੈਣੀ
He admitted what?
ਕੋਈ ਪੱਕੀ ਹੈ ਜਾਂ ਕੋਈ ਬੰਦੇ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਤ ਮੁਤਾਬਕ ਆ
ਨਹੀਂ ਪੱਕੀ ਹੈ ਕਿਉਂ ਕਰਕੇ ਉਹ 30 ਲੱਖ ਰੁਪਈਆ ਖਰਚਦੇ ਹੈ ਕਿ 35,000 ਦੇ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੈ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਨੂੰ
35,000 ਰੁਪਏ ਰੱਖਿਆ ਹੋਇਆ 35,000 ਤੁਸੀਂ ਲੈਟਰ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਹੋ ਕਿ
He's
ਅਗਰ
taking
ਉੱਥੇ ਰਹਿਣਾ
political
ਚਾਹੁੰਦਾ
donations in
ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਕਿ ਜੀ ਮੈਨੂੰ
exchange for
ਖਤਰਾ
this.
ਭਾਰਤ ਚ ਤਾਂ
ਹਾਂ ਜਿਹੜੇ 30 ਲੱਖ 40 ਲੱਖ ਦੇ ਕੇ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਹੈ
ਤੇ ਫਿਰ ਜੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਵਿਰੋਧੀ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਤੇ ਜੇ ਐਂ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਨੇ ਵੀ ਦੇਖੋ ਜੀ ਮਾਨ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਤਾਂ ਪੈਸੇ ਲੈਂਦੇ ਲੈਟਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਫਿਰ
ਨਾ ਫਿਰ ਮੈਂ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਚਲਾਉਂਗਾ ਉਹ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਚਲਾਉਂਦੇ ਆ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਮੇਰੇ ਵਿਰੋਧੀ ਵੀ ਤਾਂ ਪੈਸੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਲਈ ਲੈਂਦੇ ਹੀ ਹੈ
ਪਾਰਟੀ ਲਈ ਫੰਡ ਆਓ
ਹਾਂ
ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਘਰ ਚ ਨਹੀਂ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਉਹ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਦੇ ਖਾਤੇ ਜਾਂਦਾ
ਨਾ ਮੇਰੇ ਫੰਡ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਨੇ ਆ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਲੰਗਰ ਹੁਣ ਸਕਿਆ ਹੈ ਇਹ ਮੇਰਾ ਲੰਗਰ ਹੈ ਇਹ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਦਾ ਤਾਂ ਥੋੜ੍ਹੀ ਹੈ ਸਵੇਰੇ ਸਾਰੇ ਜਿੰਨੇ ਆਉਂਦੇ ਆ 30-40 ਇੱਥੋਂ ਹੀ ਛਕਦੇ ਆ ਇਹ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਦਾ ਲੰਗਰ ਤਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਇਹ ਤਾਂ ਮੇਰਾ ਹੈ
So tell me, how is anyone not this okay, Darshan, please back me up. How many years have we been screaming about this?
Is that not a crime though?
Many years.
Clyde, okay, I'll give you two names. Great Canadian heroes, both of Indian origin. Ujjal Dosanjh. Right? He was beaten black and blue by Khalistanis. A few months after that, another great Canadian hero, a Canadian journalist, his name is Balraj Deol. By the way, both of them are Sikhs. Balraj Deol was almost dead. He crawled to a lift, goes up, and luckily somebody sends him to a hospital. He was fighting against these people. He's of Indian origin. Everybody used to call him an Uncle Tom. They'll call me an Uncle Tom because I'm a Punjabi. I understand their language. I expose them. They'll call Darshan Uncle Tom. Why? Darshan exposes this rubbish. And you know who suffers the most? People like Darshan and I, who live honestly in Canada. The overwhelming majority of Indians are Darshan and me. And there are these rotten apples, and I don't know how to say this. The entire immigration scam is overwhelmingly run by the Khalistani networks in Canada. And Khalistanis are not an Indian problem. India dealt with the problem in the mid-80s and the mid-90s. We dealt with it. We got over it. It's a Canadian problem. I keep saying this again and again. I don't know what Darshan's opinion is, but second generation and third generation Sikhs in Canada are radicalized as hell.
That is actually to be expected. There is a great book called The Sleeping Buddha by a Canadian journalist called Hamida Ghafoor. She is of Afghanistan origin, although not Pashtun. She is a Nuristani. And they fled from there. I think her family was connected to the royal family of Afghanistan. And then when there was all this trouble, they fled to Canada. So she grew up here and became a journalist. And after 9/11, she went to UK to research about the second and third generation Muslims of Pakistani and Indian origin there. And she has written in the book that the second and third generation kids were actually radicalized when their parents and grandparents had a much more liberal way of looking at things. They were not fundamentalist or radicalized. So that is to be expected because they live in a very tight bubble where that narrative keeps bouncing around. They are not allowed to have any external inputs from anybody else who disagrees. And then they have never seen the place, or they may have gone there but not lived there. So their perception is formed by what they are told. In this context, it is only in Canada that I have heard the expression lived experience, because I don't think there can be any other kind of experience. You have to live something to experience it.
Yeah, fair enough.
So I said, what is
well,
the
this
point?
vicarious experience? I guess you could read Homer's Odyssey and you got an adventure out of it. But
Yeah. So I said, what is the point of adding this? It's like saying the salty ocean. Yeah. When you say ocean, I understand that it is salty. So I was explaining that there is lived experience and there is learned experience. So these kids are really radicalized on learned experience.
And it's scary.
Yeah, it is.
Well,
scary.
it is scary because of what we're seeing. And just before I get into this next bit, I want to take a couple of these chats from the chat here. If Phoenix Zen with the $100 super chat says, just a heartfelt thank you, Clyde. You're changing minds. Your voice for reason and well-researched truths. You're changing the Canadian culture and restoring hope to many for a better Canada. Thank you, and I wish you and your family a smooth transition. We'll miss you. That's in reference to us moving to Texas. That's a little down the road. We're not sure. We've got an immigration thing to do as well. I'm a U.S. citizen, but my wife isn't, and my kids aren't yet. Penny D with a $2 super chat says, I feel sorry for the students getting scammed. Yes,
I do
absolutely.
Too.
And before we move on to the next thing, I do actually want to show something that lends credulity to that. Debbie Clark with a $5 super chat says, we have to set precedent and not allow anyone that enters illegally to stay, period. Fair. And I couldn't agree more. If the first thing that you do when you enter a country is break the law, you're not eligible. Bye-bye, get lost. We don't want any of that. But I wanted to pop this one up on the screen. And this was after Darshan had blown the lid on this whole story, and Mark Miller had come around and actually started saying things a little bit differently, changing his tune as you would with his story about these college institutions.
These institutions are smart, and they've gone and they've seen that they can get tuition fees that are 4 or 5 times more than what my kids pay at McGill or Acadia.
Trudeau's immigration minister, Mark Miller, makes an about face on his international student policy. This was him just a few months ago.
Look, international students are a credit to this country, Mr. Speaker. They are the future of this country, and they are an asset that is very lucrative, and they are an asset that is very lucrative.
And they are an asset that is very lucrative.
Independent journalists broke the story that this was actually a scam billion-dollar industry and a backdoor for immigration.
It is not the intention of this program to have sham commerce degrees or business degrees that are sitting on top of a massage parlor that someone doesn't even go to, and then they come into the province and drive an Uber.
But that's exactly how it went down. And so that's how it actually went down, and that's that's the reality. Now, getting to the Khalistani issue, this is something that kind of popped out of nowhere for most Canadians. It popped out of nowhere for me. I had no idea what Khalistan at all even was. I had no idea what I mean, I have Indian friends, but my Indian friends that I've had for, generations, I've had friends for such long. I grew up with Indian people, but they were all from different parts of India. So they all had different ways and different cultures themselves, right? This is the first time I've ever heard of something going on that, and protests were happening on our streets. And it made me very curious to what was happening. And then now we're actually seeing scenes like this in Vancouver, which I thought was just crazy. And I'm sure I'm going to get nailed for copyright on that. Now, that was a wedding in Vancouver with a group of well-known Khalistanis with weapons that are not legal here. We've been going through some serious things. I've been talking with, Rod Giltaca, the CCFR in Canada about, getting more gun rights for Canadians. And we're fighting for our right to be able to bear arms and bear, be able to own firearms and use them legally. But these guys are holding firearms that are clearly not legal right now. I mean, just
what can you do other than laugh at this country?
Well, really, what do you do? What do you do? And you see this, and now reports have come out about what this is about, and this is where it even gets ridiculous, even to that level. And I'll show you the article that was just published today. Guns seized after video surfaces online of people dancing with firearms at Surrey celebration. So it was confirmed, because I know there was a lot of people in the notes and in the comments, saying there's no way you knew that this was in Vancouver. This is, blah, blah, blah. Well, no, it was affirmed to people, and then the RCMP was notified, and they went. Mounties have seized a number of guns after a video surfaced online showing a group of people dancing with firearms. Now, for one, they didn't arrest anybody. Right? Now, picture this going the other way. And this is where a lot of the cynicism comes from. A lot of Canadians will look at this and say, okay, well, say this was a group of white militia type people, and they had a bunch of guns that are illegal in the country, and they were dancing around with them at a fire pit or whatever, and photos hit the internet, and then the police came. Would they just seize the weapons? Would they just walk out? We're just here for the guns, ladies and gents. We're just here for the guns. Hand them over and everybody will be fine. So, and then they're asking for people to identify these individuals. People have been identifying them on the internet, and they're well-known people in the Khalistani movement. Now, where in the world, how in the world did we get here? Why is there a separatist issue that's not even, and this again, this is confusing to me because the first time I talked about this with Darshan, I thought they were trying to make a Khalistan in Canada, and he had to correct me and say, no. They don't want a Khalistan in Canada. And I'm like, well, what's their fuss about? I mean, at least the Quebec separatists are in Quebec, right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
See,
I can't help but laugh.
Clyde, if you can pull that photo again, put it on screen, I'll point out something that nobody has noticed. And
Let me.
I doubt if Kushalji has noticed.
I was just laughing at the song being played.
Right. Now, on top, it says Punjab
Yeah.
in Punjabi.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, okay.
Below that, it says Punjab in Urdu script.
Okay. And what's the relevance to that?
Punjabi in India, Punjabi is written in Gurumukhi script, which is on top.
Yeah.
Now, historically, Punjabi was also written in Urdu script, but then it was called Shahmukhi.
Yeah, Shahmukhi.
Right? So that is in Urdu script. I am trying to understand how it ended up there. Because if you want to create Khalistan on the Indian side only, then that script is nowhere. Nobody will understand. So are these guys from Pakistan because there are Sikhs in Pakistan, or are they, I mean, how did they know even the script? So that is, that brings you to the crux of whole thing of Khalistan, as I have understood, because in their map of Khalistan, they don't have the birthplace of the founder of Sikhism, which is in Pakistan. The place is called Nankana Sahib because Guru Nanak was born there. Then the only time when there was a Sikh kingdom of Maharaja Ranjit Singh from circa 1790s to 1849, the capital was the city of Lahore, which is now in Pakistan. They don't want that. Another religiously super important city called Nanded is maybe 1,000 kilometers away from their map of Khalistan because it is in the state of Maharashtra,
where I come from.
Yeah, right. So it is a completely inconsistent concept. And I have discussed this with Khalistanis. They were the nice kinds with whom you could discuss. So I've discussed this, and they don't have any answer for this. So it is a completely irrelevant issue for Canadians because it relates to a foreign grievance, but because it is happening more and more frequently, more and more publicly, it is making Canadians anti-Indian. For example, the recent referendum that they held on 28th of July in Calgary.
Wait, before you get into that, I know there's going to be a lot of people watching this show and they have no clue what the heck Khalistan is. They have no idea anything about Indian politics, anything about Indian movements throughout history. A lot of people just think that India is India, and they don't realize there's 26 different languages, there's completely different looking people, there's completely different cultures, diets, nutrition, everything is way more diverse than even Canada, right? India is. So what is Khalistan? Can you give us a TLDR, like a really quick, too long, didn't read, what the heck is Khalistan?
A homeland for Sikhs, a separate country, homeland for Sikhs.
Is that something all Sikhs believe in?
No.
Tiny, minuscule minority of Sikhs in India believe this. How about this? If you want to understand the entire movement of Khalistan, right? I would recommend a former officer, intelligence officer of India, G.S. Sandhu. He's written a wonderful book on the Khalistan movement. G.S. Sidhu. He has written a wonderful book on the Khalistan movement. And I would recommend all of you how that movement came up, how everybody has understood. It's called the Khalistan Conspiracy. G.S. Sidhu is an officer in the Indian. He's part of the Indian intelligence, and he explains how the mistakes were made by the Indian government, then how Khalistan came up, and what is the net result. And the second book I would recommend everybody to read if they want to understand this, I can share the
the image of the book, if you guys want, on the screen, if you guys want me to share.
Yeah. Actually, I'll pop that up.
Yeah. So this is the first book I will recommend everyone to read. You can buy it on Canadian Amazon too, I'm pretty sure. It's called The Khalistan Conspiracy. It's by GBS Sidhu. And the next book that I would recommend is by a veteran Canadian journalist. And I want to put this on record. Terry Milevsky did not. Terry is a good friend, someone I deeply admire, one of my favorite Canadians. He's a legend. He's a legendary journalist. And Terry could not find a publisher for this book. Guess where? In Canada. There was not a single Canadian publishing house that agreed to publish this book, which was called Blood for Blood by Terry Milevsky. He's a veteran Canadian journalist. You all must have seen him on CBC interviewing people time and again. You can pop it up on the screen. And
I don't have it in the chat. Sorry, where would I find that?
Oh, it's just you can just put the share screen on the bottom.
I see. I see. There we go.
I use StreamYard all the time. So this is Blood for Blood. This is by Terry Milevsky. You will understand the entire movement from a Canadian perspective, what happens in Canada. I want to repeat again, they could not find a publisher for this book in Canada. A Canadian journalist had to go to India to publish this book. That's how legally the messed up this entire process. And this is the book that was I had recommended first. The Khalistan Conspiracy, a former RNAW, that is the Research and Analysis Wing of India officer, unravels the path to 1984. So you will see where India messed up. You'll see where Canada has messed up. And if you really want to understand how Khalistan is actually not an Indian problem anymore and it's a Canadian problem, I think the best way to understand this is how deeply your politicians are involved. I'm going to share this Twitter thread by a Sikh, by the way, Navdeep Singh. He's a Sikh. He's not a Hindu before somebody accuses him. He's a Sikh. And you will see in this thread how Canadian politicians are actually bought over by Khalistanis. So, for example, this is the Khalsa Diwan Society of Abbotsford and how they fund the Liberal Party of Canada. Now, who's the Khalsa Diwan Society of Abbotsford and what they do? These are the Khalsa Diwan Society of Abbotsford's, bullying innocent Sikh man because he doesn't agree with the Khalistan idea. Then, lo and behold, Mo Dhaliwal. Now, Mo Dhaliwal is of the Poetic Justice Foundation, and he's a consistent donor to the one and only, the great Jagmeet Singh of the NDP. And there are screenshots available for everyone to see, how Mo Dhaliwal has, contributed to Jagmeet Singh. Now, somebody might say it's not illegal. Yeah, I'm not saying it's illegal to donate. But the point is, these are links. Then there is Bhagat Singh Brar and Parvkar Singh Dulai. These are Khalistani extremists who are, on no-fly lists of Canada and US, and they are regular donors to Jagmeet Singh too. These are the details of that. They're regular donors to Canadian politicians. These people are on no-fly lists. These are further details. Then you have Jaskaran Sandhu, who runs an organization. They've been donors. And this thread actually gives the entire detail. So my question is that, was everybody just sleeping? That's my question. Was everybody just sleeping? I repeat once again, people like myself and many others from the Indian community, whether they are of Sikh origin, whether they are of Hindu origin, whether they are of Muslim origin, whether they are of Christian origin, or whether they are atheists, they've been screaming at the top of their lungs, shouting and telling, fix this problem. Listen, I'm going to take the most racist comment on board and say, send all these Indians back. Okay, everybody with an Indian passport, we'll take them back in India. Hypothetical, never going to happen. Hypothetically, we'll take them back. What are you going to do with all these radicalized Canadian passport holders? And a majority of them who are radicalized, you will not want to accept it is because it's a convenient fact. Khalistan is a Canadian problem. I don't have a problem in India. I can travel freely in Punjab. I can say what I want to say in Punjab.
You cannot go, if you are an opponent of if you oppose Khalistan, you cannot go to certain pockets of Surrey, British Columbia and Brampton, Ontario. You cannot go there. You're not going to go there because there's going to be so much hostility. And it's a Canadian issue. Why are people going on blaming India? It's a Canadian problem. They say, oh, send them back to India. Well, actually, India has given, since the 1980s, multiple dossiers to the Canadian government, whether conservative, whether liberal, whether NDP, whatever. We've given dossier after dossier to the Canadian governments. Send these people back to India. They are violent criminals. We want to try them in Indian courts. Guess how many have been sent back? A giant zero. Just last year, when the whole Hardeep Singh Nijjar thing happened, we sent 25 names. How many have been sent back? Zero. It's a Canadian problem. Why do Canadians keep blaming Indians?
So what's the government's perspective on this? Because from what I understand, the Indian government sees the Khalistani movement as a terrorist organization. Is that classified as such?
It is
in
a
India?
terrorist movement. It is a terrorist movement.
Right. So it's classified as such in India,
Yeah.
correct? But not in Canada. And Canada seems to be this only place where it doesn't classify that.
Canada seems to have given far too much leeway to... Clyde, these are scary people. I don't know how else to say this. These are scary, radicalized people. And, brandishing guns at a wedding is just the tip of the iceberg. I want to ask this question. And Darshanji, please correct me if I'm wrong. Doesn't Brampton, Ontario have the highest car insurance rates in all of Canada?
Yes.
Darshanji, can you explain to the Canadian public why it is so?
Well, the highest auto insurance fraud is happening in Brampton. So we are all paying for that.
Yeah. And why is it happening?
Auto-
Darshanji, everybody knows why it's happening.
Yeah. And even auto thefts. That is now the new thing for the last year or two. Auto thefts. So yeah, see, any movement of this nature will have the potential to drift away into certain activities. Like Terry Milewski and Terry Glavin also have been talking about
Kim Bolan.
Kim Bolan. They've been talking about the criminal activities of the Khalistani gangs, basically. And then there is inter-gang warfare, but every time a high-profile person gets killed, conveniently you can blame India for having carried out extraterritorial
Darshanji, can you tell everybody how many Interpol lookout notices were there for the man who was given a 1 minute silence by the entire Canadian well, the Canadian Parliament claps for Nazis, so I'm not surprised. But Hardeep Singh Nijjar, Clyde, had 2 lookout notices from the Interpol. Okay, he was on the no-fly list of Canada. Your parliament is doing a moment of silence for this person and eulogizing him as a hero. Tell me, why is India wrong in any of this? Guess who Hardeep Singh Nijjar donated to? Guess who?
I'm going to get NDP. I'm going to...
Yes, sir. Yes,
sir. I'm just like throwing it out there. Is that...
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. So the rumor mill is that Jagmeet Singh is not allowed to enter India. He's not allowed to go in the country. And it has to do with his ties with the Khalistani movement. Now, I didn't know the significance of this when I was reporting on it. So, I mean, nearly 2 years ago, I mentioned it in a podcast because a video had gone around of him with a bunch of other Khalistanis, I suppose. And he was at the event. And then at the event, they were talking about how violence is a good way of achieving political ends. In that meeting with Jagmeet Singh present at the table at the time, and a lot of criticism was thrown his way because of the things that he said about the Freedom Convoy at the time in Canada. And the Freedom Convoy never had any aspirations of violence. In fact, they had the very opposite aspirations. They wanted everything to avoid violence. A famous Indian. They got a lot of ideas from him. Mahatma Gandhi. He was the guy that said, at first they ridicule you, and then they laugh at you, and then first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they try to fight you, and then you win. And that was the whole thought of the Freedom Convoy and the truckers in that. Meanwhile, Jagmeet Singh doing his thing with the Khalistanis has largely left him unable to even go to India to visit there. What's the connection there between the NDP and the Khalistani movement? Is there a connection, or is that just because of Jagmeet Singh?
It's not just the NDP, Clyde. This is like, this is in Hinduism, we have the idea of Brahman. Brahman is everywhere. Khalistan is like the Parabrahman. It's everywhere in Canadian politics. It's like the God that influences everything. I don't care. Tim Uppal, look at his tweets. Then you look at the exact words of Patrick Brown. Look at his tweets. They're so shameless. They just copy paste each other's tweets. Who gives a damn? Patrick Brown is from Brampton. Tim Uppal is the Conservative Party leader. Then you'll find some random liberal. Then you'll find some random person in NDP. They're everywhere. And all of y'all did not care because it didn't affect you economically. But the moment the economics of the country went haywire, everybody was like, hang on, I need to blame someone. Lo and behold, an old Sikh gentleman ended up pooping at a gas station. And then shit hit the roof. And everybody was like, we need to blame someone. This guy wears a turban. Let's find all the turban-wearing people. Well, zippity-doo-dah. Some of us were talking about some of them. What happened then?
Yeah, but Clyde, coming back to the point, the Khalistan referendum that took place in Calgary on 28th of July, they had been given a place to put their portaloos, which was exactly the spot where the church gives food to the homeless and needy every Sunday, I think. Right? So these are the points that will create friction and resentment. And that resentment will be directed towards Indians, but the friction was caused by people who hate India.
Yes.
Right? So
wow, that's very profound. So wow. So a lot of people are throwing, because again, people just don't know what the heck is going on. Like I didn't know what Khalistan was 6 months ago. I didn't know what the hell that was. You know what I mean? And I can't blame other people for not knowing, right? And then, you hear about this movement of Indian separation and blah, blah, blah. And yeah, a lot of people are like, holy cow, I didn't know all of these Indians are into that. Well, it turns out only it's a small group of them. They're a very loud minority. It's a whatever, that. And the profound statement that you just gave is these are people that hate India. So, and is that true? So like devil's advocate, right? Like have a look at it from the perspective of a Khalistani for a moment, if you will. Is there a devil's advocate argument, something that would, they have some sort of justification in their beliefs. They have some sort of, good way of looking at things. They deserve to have some separate territory. I'm not sure. I don't even know what their beliefs are. All I see is guns being waved around, and that's never a good look, right?
Yeah, but you see, if first of all, 2/3 of the historical territory of Punjab is in Pakistan, they don't want it. The holiest place, the birthplace of the founder of Sikhism is in Pakistan, they don't want it. The political capital of the only Sikh kingdom to have ever existed, Lahore, is in Pakistan, they don't want it. The next, I would say, important religious location apart from the Golden Temple and therefore the city of Amritsar is the city of Nanded in Maharashtra, which is like 1,000 kilometers away from Punjab. They don't want it. So there are so many internal inconsistencies in the whole narrative, which they don't see.
Is that just because of a political thing? Like it's easier to go after India, an independent state, than a Muslim state that has the backing of all the other Muslim states in the world,
No,
essentially?
there is reason to believe that there is a lot of backing coming to the Khalistan movement from Pakistan itself.
Yeah, there's enough evidence for that.
Yeah, right. And Pakistan sees this as a payback for breaking up Pakistan in 1971 when Bangladesh became a country. See, Pakistan was in two different areas of the subcontinent. What we know as Pakistan today was West Pakistan, and what we know as Bangladesh today was East Pakistan. They were one country. And then there was a lot of unrest there, and India had to intervene militarily, and therefore Bangladesh became an independent country. So Pakistan has seen that ever since then as a payback for what India did to Pakistan in their view, right? So they want India to be broken up the way Pakistan was broken up. So there is a lot of backing for the Khalistan movement from Pakistan. So they will not touch Pakistan. They can't say we want your territory also. Although there are very, very significant locations in that territory that should theoretically be in Khalistan.
So then the other question would be, so say they got their way. Say they got their way. At the end of the day, they get their geographical region. Do all the Khalistanis pick up, get airplane tickets, and go live in that geographical region?
Yeah,
My
right.
bet is no. My bet is no, zero.
Well, I'm
Nobody's
just
gonna
curious
go.
because like this is very fervent. I mean, it's like there was lots and lots of cars. I think there was a Lambo in the lineup in Edmonton. Like, there was a lot of cars with this flag,
Well,
and I know if Quebec separated, a lot of Quebecers from the rest of Canada would probably be like, "Oh, I better either go back to Quebec or make a decision otherwise." And I'm not saying that Quebec should separate or anything like that. I'm just saying that there is a movement of separatists, right? If that were the case, that they were separate, people would have to make a choice there. Is this something that's realistic?
Nobody is going to give up their Western passport and go back there.
nobody is going to do that, and I just want to remind people, there is a government of India. It's not going to happen. It's never going to happen. They can keep dreaming. The Indian government is not going to give a millimeter, forget an inch. We might take some from Pakistan. We're not going to give anything. I just want to put that on record, and anybody who has these, yeah, I just want to make everybody understand it. Like, this is India is the 5th largest economy in the world. It has one of the most powerful militaries in the world. Best of luck doing that. With your AK-47s in your wedding.
Yeah. See, significantly, there is a huge chunk of Indian army that is Sikh.
No. And Indian Sikhs don't want to leave India.
Yeah,
See,
they
try and
don't want to
understand.
leave India.
Okay, and let me explain this to you. This movement, if you followed me on Twitter, you'll notice I'd never call it a Sikh movement, because it's not a Sikh movement. Khalistan is a movement of a small set of one caste group amongst the larger Sikh community. I'm going to say it as it is. And even most of those members of that caste group are also civilized, decent people. It's just a very violent minority in the Jat Sikh community. So I never say the Sikh. I just say Jat Khalistanis. Listen, it's a gang violence. Listen, you have gangs in India, gangs in Canada. They're running a proper drug trafficking, human trafficking racket, which is why trucking industry is a very important tool, because if you want to transport drugs, you want to transport human beings from one place to the other, it's very important. You need logistics. It's needed. I'm just stating it as it is. And then another aspect of it is the deep misogyny in the Jat music industry. A lot of violence is promoted through those songs, and there is a great research done where two researchers, Sumati Tusu and Shivangi Deshwal, they actually did a content analysis of Jat rap. They actually did a content. I have promoted that research paper on my own podcast. I read the damn paper and I shared it. I actually must have read at least the lyrics of more than 1,000 Punjabi songs myself, rap music.
to do an analysis and back what they were saying, and their research was and how this culture of gun violence and all of this is promoted. And listen, this is not promoted in India. All the studios are in Canada. All your companies are Canadian. The music industry is Canadian. The shows are Canadian. The artists are Canadian. And it's like, oh, go back to India. Well, fix your own damn mess, Canada. You have a mess in 2-3 cities, and it's all interconnected. It's no longer anything to do with religion. It's just a mafiosa thing. It's like a mafiosa thing now. And they have their thing running. And Canadian politics, see, I'll give one thing to them. They make good music and good beats. So gotta give it to them. Nice music. Nobody understands what they're saying. Clyde, if you're gonna listen to it, you're gonna be like,
No, I don't know how to speak Punjabi, so I would never get it.
you're not gonna get head or tail of it. You're gonna be like, that sounds nice. I'll listen to it. It's like
Now I'm curious. It would be good to get like a translation of some of these songs so we can hear what they're actually saying.
Right, I'm gonna share this link of it's in English. This paper was written in English language. It's a well-researched scholarship paper. I've sent it in the private chat. I want your listeners to actually understand these things. And I'm sharing scholarly articles. These are peer-reviewed articles. These are not off-the-cuff, far-right conspiracy theories. These are peer-reviewed things that I'm sharing. The books that I've shared are written by solid people who have references and who have everything to back it up. This article, please read the Punjabi music lyrical analysis written by these two women. And these are good things that you guys should understand. It's insane. What is happening over here is insane. And it is such a toxic culture, this entire culture of Jat masculinity. And it's mixed with the Khalistan movement. And it's a bunch of rubbish. It's so easy. You want to send someone illegally from Canada to America, America to Canada. You know who to go to. It's so funny. Like if I go to Bakersfield, California and have an off-the-cuff conversation with some members, and they'll be like, oh, sir, I came here illegally. This is how I came. It's so funny. They just have casual conversations about it. They just have casual conversations.
That's unreal.
I
want to showcase this because more people need to hear about this. I'm going to get to some of these super chats before they run away on me. David Lazowski for $5 says, it's been known for a while that the Pakistan intelligence has been funding them. You can find declassified CIA documents that confirm everything. I was completely unaware of all of this. Debbie Clark saying we have to set a precedent and not allow anyone that enters the country illegally to stay. Period. And I couldn't agree with that more. Absolutely. Why people are being allowed to stay after entering the country illegally is just beyond me entirely. I don't know how that's even possible.
And if you think the conservatives are going to solve it, best of luck.
So here's the thing. Pierre Poilievre was in an interview recently, and I don't think a lot of people have seen this one. This one's from a publication called, what are they? TLN. Have you ever heard of them? No, I haven't heard of them. But I just came across this the other day. But Pierre Poilievre and his wife were interviewed by this lovely lady here. And the reason why I stumbled on it is this just somehow wound up in my shorts. Not in my shorts, but in my shorts feed on YouTube. But I don't know how that came out. But this is Pierre Poilievre talking specifically about the immigration issue in Canada.
That problem has a name, Justin Trudeau. He caused the problem. The immigrant people did not cause the problem. They did what they were told. The rules were online. They followed the rules. And they came here. They did what he said they should do. The problem is that he destroyed the common sense approach that worked for 150 years, where we brought in people in numbers that we could absorb into housing, healthcare, and the job market, where people came in lawfully, where the international students actually studied, and the temporary foreign workers actually filled jobs that Canadians couldn't fill. That was the system we had before, and that worked. If we get back to that, we can bring back the best system in the world. It gives high achievers and hard workers a chance to flee a bad situation and come to the best country in the world and achieve their dreams.
Now that sounds like a lot of great wishes. I mean, politicians will say what they have to say to get elected, or is he telling the truth? Is this something he addressing? Like he seems like he's actually addressing the issue here. No.
There are two parts to this.
Okay.
Now, before I get into that, let me repeat that I think that Pierre is taking this strategically so that he doesn't face unnecessary backlash and then he has to spend time and energy. He's unfolding his policy in stages. Back in July last year, I was the first one to throw this grenade at a presser of his, and I asked him if we are bringing in too many people. So from there, I have seen his answers progress. But there are two components here. First, he said that people are doing things that are in the law. That is only partly true. There is a lot of illegality, and in fact, much of our problem is from that illegality. Number one. Number two, even within the law, for example, if someone comes here on a study permit and then because they cannot get a postgraduate work permit, the consultant files a refugee claim for them. And conveniently, there are all these Khalistan referendums happening, so they can just pose there for a photograph and submit it as proof that I will be persecuted in India because I am supporting Khalistan. So, yeah, I'll give you one simple data point. In 2022, there were 4,000 refugee applications from international students. In 2023, that number tripled to 12,000. And as they begin clamping down on postgraduate work permits and international student permits themselves, you will see an even higher increase in refugee applications. So the system as it is full of loopholes, and even beyond the loopholes, there is mind-boggling illegality happening. And for Pierre to crack down on that, he will need an army of mercenaries whose job will be to slash everything that is standing in the way. I don't know if he can muster that army. I hope he does, but I don't know.
It's beyond the state's capacity, honestly, if you ask me. The state does not have a capacity to do any of this.
Well, you just blew my mind with the recruiting strategy of Khalistan right there, because that right there is, hey, now you're one of us. Now you're persecuted. Now you can be eligible for some sort of thing because the Canadian government won't recognize them as a militant group.
So I was just looking at the numbers as per the Toronto Star and Mark Miller. The annual number of people who sought protection here was way above the pre-COVID level, which was 64,000 in 2019. That reached 91,722, 143,580 in 2023. And in the first 5 months of 2024, already 77,725 applicants have already applied. This is as per the Toronto Star. But there is one more aspect to it that I think the number of people being deported has also slightly increased from what I have understood. That that is also there. I think Canada has spent like $115 million deporting nearly 29,000 migrants since 2022. That's a lot of money to deport people. Just 22,000.
Yeah, but so many cannot be found. There's like tens of thousands of them who cannot be found. There are deportation orders, but nobody knows. Again, this brings me to an associated point, which is there was this much publicized case of a guy in Brampton, international student, who was in a Jeep. There's a video of it. He was in a Jeep. He has a twirled mustache. And he was in
the police officer's son.
Yeah, and the police officer was holding on to him and he drove away. So, the police officer could have got injured. and then he was absconding. And then after a few months, he was arrested from somewhere in BC, now from Brampton to BC. And I have not seen any discussion of who helped him to hide. He has been arrested, but whoever helped him to hide for all these months should be arrested as well.
Yeah.
I have seen zero question even from the media. So there are so
Well,
many.
why would the media didn't even question who was holding the guns in Surrey last weekend? They were just concerned that the guns got picked up.
The media
and that's
doesn't.
it.
The media doesn't question Hardeep Singh Nijjar giving money to your politician. So what the hell do you expect from Canadian media?
Yeah, see,
Well,
it is
absolutely.
It's only now citizen journalists, for lack of a better term, who even this the guns issue of yesterday that erupted because someone individual posted it on Twitter.
I have a question for both of you. Darshanji, what if Canada cracks down on these diploma mills, these diploma factories? Would that make a difference if they simply shut these universities down and they say you cannot have more than like 10% international students in these diploma colleges, and they basically phase them out eventually because the market economics will not work? Do you think that should be done? That's something a federal government and the state government, provincial government could do, right? I apologize. I use the word state government is because in India, we don't call it a province. We call it a state. I apologize. And I kind of
Oh, no, it's fine.
half in
Yeah,
India.
no, it's fine.
That's why. No, actually, Clyde, if you remember in our first chat, I had said this, that enrollment of international students should not be more than 10% of the total student strength. And there should also be a cap on tuition revenue of 30% of total revenue from international students. Because if international students are paying 3 times more, then
that is an incentive, yeah.
30%.
In many occasions, Darshanji, like in the University of Toronto Science Program, international students pay 6 times more.
Yeah, they do. I know. I've met them. So, if they are charging 6 times more, then their 10% limit would be correspondingly less. So, that can always be a solution. Number 2, all these fly-by-night colleges, the ones we highlighted in our first video,
Yeah.
in a strip mall plaza, and 2 p.m. on a weekday, there is nobody inside, nobody outside, the place is closed. It's just a college for the sake of visas. Even public colleges like Conestoga, yesterday I saw a report saying in the last year they had net revenue surplus of $252 million.
Wow.
Yeah.
The year before it was $160 million. So now they are pushing on $500 million in surplus. Like they're sitting on that money. And the argument is that we need international students because the conservative premiers are slashing funding to post-secondary education institutions. Like these guys are sitting on $500 million. How much more funding do they need?
It's an immigration factory. These are immigration factories, nothing else. There and Clyde, you know what the tragedy is? They're literally scamming Indian students, and Indian students are falling for it too. And I want to criticize the Indian government, especially the state government of Punjab in India, the provincial government of Punjab in India, that they are letting these partners of the immigration scammers over here survive in Punjab in India, and they are equally criminally involved in the scam of fooling young Indian children. They're, in many cases, their parents in Punjab, they have to sell their jewelry, they have to sell their agricultural land. People think they must be holding hundreds of acres of land in Punjab. The average land holding in Punjab is like 3 to 4 hectares or acres. That's it. That's the data from the government of Punjab.
That's small.
That's small. And these people literally sell their entire property so that their children can go to Canada. And these people, these soulless people in India, who are partners of these soulless people in Canada, they are robbing these students. Somebody needs to educate these children and tell them that, listen, don't come here. Don't come to Canada. You're ruining your lives.
Well, I think word's getting out because if you look at the internet right now, Immigrant Canada Internet or Immigrant Canada YouTube, there is so many videos of I'm leaving Canada, don't come. This has become like a big problem, or at least a big popular thing on the algorithm, because people, the algorithm, it does its thing, and as soon as somebody realizes that a thing's popular, everybody starts doing it. Now, so many people, especially from India, are saying, I'm getting out of here, and you're best not to come, because any opportunities have dried up.
See, in this whole hula baloo, there is one serious point that has gone off the radar, which is before this began, around 2021-22, the big issue on international student front was the number of them committing suicide. And just one funeral home in the GTA, his owner said in a TV interview that his funeral home sends back 4 to 5 international students to India, I mean the body, to
Every
India
month.
every month.
Lotus Funeral Home, Brampton.
Lotus Funeral Home, right? He said 4 to 5 bodies of international students being sent back from only that one funeral home. Then there was this Sikh temple in Surrey. They said that they are also, organizing to send students' bodies home, or organizing a funeral here if that is what is to be done. So that issue has fallen off the radar because everybody is now angry at international students. But there is a lot of suffering on that side also, and this is because they were sold a bill of goods in India. Everybody in India and in Canada is in cahoots. They are just interested in the money. They don't care about the human cost.
Yeah.
So many are being drawn into crime or in human trafficking, especially girls. I told you about the article in a Gujarati newspaper saying, warning parents to think twice before sending their daughters for education in Canada, because they could be trafficked. So these are all the human costs that are happening, and those have unfortunately fallen off the radar because now the problem has moved in a different direction, where we are in a mood to blame the international students, but we need to look at both the sides here.
Yeah, in many ways, the victim in this entire scenario has been made the culprit, and the culprits are like, oh, we didn't do anything. And I wish a lot of these immigration firms that are selling pipe dreams to kids in India are sent to jail, and that's an Indian problem. But all of them are actually not the parent companies. The parent companies are all owned in Canada by Canadian passport holders. I want to drill that again and again and again. Those are subsidiaries, partners of Canadian companies in Canada who are running these immigration factories for these diploma mills. And these diploma mills are funded, and I don't know who they're greasing in Canada. I don't know that. I'm not going to go around making insinuations. But hey, if you put 2 and 2 together, and if you're smart enough, you can draw the line right up to the political class of Canada. It's not that complex. It's not that complex. And a lot of folks like Darshan, myself, and many others were warning the Canadian people. But hey, who cares when a brown man says it? Who cares, right? Darshan, am I wrong?
Yeah, I'm just pulling up the ladder behind me.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Like
A
now
lot of
you are
people
in
care.
Canada, you don't want anyone else to come to Canada.
Exactly.
These guys are suffering. They are dying.
Yeah.
But the situation's kind of reversing, because now, unless you're Indian, you're not allowed to talk about this subject because now it's become a hot button issue. It's actually one of the more important issues to Canadians at the moment. And we see this in the polls. We see this, what is it now? Went up from 9% back in 2023 to 19% of the biggest issues of the day for the average voter. With housing affordability and inflation being some of the higher things, which I would contribute those two things to immigration as well as healthcare. I know, Jagmeet Singh, Jimmy Dhaliwal, he's been talking about how the grocery stores are making record profits, and not mentioning the fact that, they're feeding more than 2 million people more than they used to only a couple of years ago. So I'd see probably them putting a lot more food through their grocery stores. But the immigration has become a big issue. And what a big issue in this whole thing is that people were lied to. People were lied to. They were told, you come over on this temporary, what was meant for temporary ever immigration statuses, and then they're told you can then, play immigration fraud, get another type of visa afterwards, and then that will lead to you eventually being able to get your permanent residency, and then from there your citizenship. But this is turning because of the popularity of this. Because of the popularity moving towards immigration being an issue, now what does the Liberal government do? Any politician for that matter, they're turning their back on who they previously were holding up, and now they're going after them. They're saying Ottawa has no plans to give all undocumented workers residential status. Now Mark Miller is saying, totally different tune than he was singing only several months ago before this became such a giant issue.
Yeah, and did you guys read the news of Edmonton where those 6 criminals, their names were released? I think at least 4 of them were 19 or 17 years old. How do you think they were lured into violent crime?
Right.
Well, yeah, I don't think they came all the way over here with criminal master plans in mind. I don't think that was.
No, actually, there is a twist on that, Clyde. There is a twist on that. Just this morning, a very senior Sikh gentleman who is very prominent in the GTA Sikh community told me that in some cases, they are, the family has a son who is now going wayward and getting into crime, and they are afraid that at some point he will bring shame to the family, so they ship him off to Canada.
So they're sending criminals over.
No, Canada has always been a safe haven. I mean, you have former murderers of Bangladeshi leaders living in Canada very openly, Clyde. Don't be surprised.
Yeah.
Nazi war criminals. I'm sorry to say.
Yeah,
but
you
this
guys.
is-
You guys applaud Nazis in the parliament. So why are you?
No. I know we did that. I don't want to say we. I mean the government at hand.
Yeah,
did.
the government
But,
of Canada.
No.
Apparently, after the Second World War, so many of the Waffen SS just came to Canada.
Yeah.
And they didn't allow communities to go and hunt them down to seek, bring them back and have them tried for their war crimes. No, Canada has been a safe haven for a long time for this kind of thing.
No, the guy who is convicted of assassinating Bangladeshi president has been living in Toronto openly for decades.
Yeah.
Openly.
Yeah.
Very openly. Forget that. Do you remember not the last visit of Justin Trudeau when he had the plane kerfuffle? The one before that, there was a man. Clyde, try and understand this. I forgot his name.
Jaspal Atwal.
Atwal. So there's this man Atwal. He's on the no-fly list of Canada. Just figured this out, okay? If Terry Milevsky would not have gone and given that interview at that point of time on Canadian television and mentioned, hang on, what is Jaspal Atwal doing with Justin Trudeau in India when he's on the no-fly list of Canada? So Jaspal had to drive to America, fly from America to India. First of all, how did he enter India? Kudos to the Indian government for letting him enter. I mean, you know why he could enter? Because he was on the special list with the Prime Minister of Canada, and you can't arrest anyone who comes in under diplomatic umbrage. So he comes with Trudeau. He's a criminal who was charged.
He was convicted.
And he was convicted. And he's traveling with your Prime Minister in India. So I'm sorry if nobody takes Canada seriously.
Yeah, he was convicted of trying to assassinate a visiting Punjabi minister from Punjab.
Yes.
Back in the 80s, he was convicted. And then he ended up. Yeah, he ended up in the entourage of Justin Trudeau.
Yeah. And Justin Trudeau can do the Bhangra, so hey, who cares?
Here is the interesting part. Here is the interesting part, though. When this controversy blew up, then Randeep Sarai, who is MP from somewhere around Surrey, he took responsibility. He's a Liberal MP, and he took responsibility, saying, "I am the one who invited him." Then the narrative changed, that this whole thing was masterminded by rogue elements of Indian intelligence services. Now, if you put the two together, Randeep Sarai's confession, taking it at face value, and the second narrative at face value, Randeep Sarai is in cahoots with rogue elements of the Indian intelligence agency. But nobody bothers to confront him with this, interpretation. Like, is this where we are at now? See, Canadian media is deeply incurious. They don't like to dig deep. They don't like to ask the uncomfortable or difficult questions. They want to get along, go along to get along.
Mm-hmm.
So this is why, all this, again, coming back to the social friction thing, it's because all the difficult questions have not been asked. The ministers responsible need to be to be confronted on a continuous basis until they are. See, if CBC had devoted half as much energy to this issue as they did to the $75,000 claim of Senator Mike Duffy, day after day, you switch on. Back then I used to watch CBC, now I don't. But day after day you start the national, and they breathlessly they are talking about the latest development, which is like minutiae, but they were all so energetic about it. If they had spent even half as much energy on this issue, we would be in a much better place today. But they don't see their role as holding the government to account. They want to see which way we are going to be more comfortable.
So I don't like to leave things on everything's terrible note and then leave everyone hanging on that. What do we do? What do we do moving forward here? We've got a whole, like you said, shit's hit the fan, and proverbially, and all over social media, people talking about poop instead of other things. But moving forward, like, we really do need to address these real issues. This is like no joke. So what is it that we can do, and what do we have moving forward that can actually like pull us out of this situation?
See, I'm convinced that positive change will only come from the grassroots. We have already seen how individuals just being on social media have been effective. Not just the two of us, but many others as well. And not just on this file, but other files as well. Like Brittany on the whole Khalistan issue, or
she's doing amazing work.
Yeah, amazing work. And Andy Lee on the whole China interference issue. I mean, she's like unbelievable, right? So that will have to continue. And secondly, a couple of very good Indian origin friends of mine suggested to me that we need to do something on our own. So they are thinking of starting a movement called South Asians for Responsible Immigration. So the advantage is that the acronym SAFRI is pronounceable and means something to Indians. Safari, which has to do with suffer, meaning travel. So immigrants having traveled. So that is going to start. That we need a responsible immigration policy. The one that we have now is completely out of control. It is irresponsible, and this is coming from the community itself, where you have the highest numbers. For example, this year so far, out of all the permanent residency visas issued, 31% have gone to Indians. So that's lopsided. We don't want that. Things like that. So that kind of grassroots movement will bring about positive change.
Kushal, what do you think is a good step forward, especially with relations with India? Our government's been trashing relations with India, and being one of our bigger trading partners, we want to, in the future, have a better relationship with India. How do we fix that?
Well, first of all, they should fix that by listening to the Indian government and sending criminals that India wants sent to India. That would be step number one. Step number two, I don't agree that X percentage of people from one origin come more, so that's a problem. It's not how many people come from there, it's what kind of people come. So I actually don't agree with that at all. I don't care if 100 people come from, let's say, Israel. And in the year 2025,
It's 100 out of 100 permanent residents were Israeli. It doesn't matter. I think that should never be the issue. It's how do they come? Do they assimilate? And how do we judge assimilation? Well, what are the crime rates? Do they follow the law? How do they merge into society? And when we measure Indian immigrants on most parameters that are sociologically measurable, they end up being the best migrants in every country. It's not a coincidence that they are the least violent in UK, they're the least violent in Canada, they're the least violent in America, in Australia, in New Zealand, in country after country. Ben Shapiro likes to say facts don't care about your feelings. Well, facts actually don't care about your feelings. And the facts are that Indian migrants end up being the best ones. The problem is not that 30% Indians got the permanent residencies. The problem is the 1 million that came in. Reduce the 1 million. It should be gradual. Secondly, I was the student in 2001. I was not allowed to work 40 hours. Who the hell made that rule? If you're going to work 40 hours in a week, when are you going to study? When is that person going to study? Secondly, children in India, I always say this to every single young Indian kid watching my podcast, because I have a giant listener base, right? Almost 65% of my listener base is from India. I always tell them that, listen, immigration is a privilege. It is not a right. So if you think about migrating somewhere, figure your finances out and look at that country, whether it's worth going there or not. Listen, you have to understand, as far as the trade balance is concerned, I don't know how else to say this. Canada is not even in the top 25 trading partners of India.
No, but India is one of our bigger trading partners.
Yeah,
it's a different sort of relationship there.
So best of luck to Canada ruining their relations with India.
Yeah.
I mean, what can I say? Indians give you the best tech workers. Indians give you nurses. India gives you a lot of technical expertise. Lawyers, many people. You model Canadians are of Indian origin. The problem is that you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You don't throw the baby. Listen, if Canada doesn't take Indians, America will, Australia will, UK will, New Zealand will, everybody else will. Who cares? They will go somewhere else. Already, if you notice, the movement to Australia and other parts of the world has increased from India. And parents and immigration agencies are actively telling people, don't go to Canada. Well, I guess everybody is happy. But in the long run, Clyde, if Indians don't come over here, that's a net loss for Canada too, because they assimilate the fastest. Look at second generation Indian children. Look at first generation Indian children. I live here for 6 months. I'm more Canadian than many Canadians. And I don't even live here 12 months of the year. I live here for 6 months. That's it. I'm in India. I'm an Indo-Canadian podcaster. And let me tell you, I'm proud of the Canadian part as much as I'm proud of the Indian part. I literally am the classic case of someone who lives half in Canada, half in India. And I'm proud of both countries. I care for Canada as much as I care for India. I don't need to pick one. I love both. And I'm not going to pick one. And I'm not going to play the game of some stupid Khalistani online or some stupid white racist online. I'm not going to play that game. I'm not going to feed to the lowest common denominator. Like, Clyde, I reached out to you because I liked you. You remember, I reached out to you. You didn't reach out to me.
Yeah, you reached out to me. Yeah, it wasn't the other way around.
I reached out to you, and I want to put that on record because I saw something good in you. That's why I reached out to you. I wanted to use your platform and tell people, okay, you don't want Indians, send them back. It's your loss. It's your loss. Send them back. It's okay. Indian economy is good enough to take them all back right now. Darshan will back me up. He knows how well India is doing right now economically. We are growing 7% plus for the last decade. You think we can't take our own children back? You think the Indian government is not going to take its own kids back? They will. Look at how Canadian government took care of Canadians in Ukraine and compare to how Indian government sent special planes to Ukraine and got each and every Indian out. We care for our citizenry. And I say this with full responsibility. We truly care for our citizens when they're stuck. So let's not beat around the bush. I want India and Canada both to prosper. They cannot prosper with 1.2 million people coming inside Canada. Let's reduce that number. Let's shut down all the diploma mills, these third-rated human trafficking agencies that are exploiting young Indian children. And can we counsel Indian children who are protesting outside and tell them, listen, this is not a human right, go back to India?
Yeah.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Holy cow. I'm going to leave this out with some of the super chats at the very end here. Will Kowalchuk says for $10, Clyde, thank you so much for keeping us informed and thank you for your guests and all chat. I can't believe our beautiful country has gotten this bad. We need an election now. Well, will the election help? I don't know. We need to change our sentiment, and that's really what we need to do. Absolutely. We also have Dai Feichu with a $10 super chat saying, Clyde, this is one of your best live streams. And I think these two gentlemen are filling us in on what is happening in Canada, which is amazing because so many people just don't know what's happening at the moment in Canada. Even they only know what's happening in their immediate little bubble. Milady Loves Cats with $13.99 says, wow, thank you so much, Clyde, and thank you, gentlemen. I learned a lot. And you can continue to learn. Of course, you can see Darshan. He's on all over Twitter. He's also all over YouTube. I'm going to publish this again on Monday and make sure that all the links are in the description down below. You can go check out Krishal's podcast. What's the name of your podcast where people can find you?
Okay, so it's for you guys, I would say it's called the Carvaka podcast, Carvaka podcast, but it's actually a Sanskrit word, an ancient Indian language. It's called Charvak. It's old school. You can find me on YouTube. You can find me on Spotify, everywhere, and obviously on Twitter. It's Kushal, KUSHAL_Mehra. Yeah, that's my channel. So you guys can find me everywhere. I talk about Canadian issues all the time. This Monday, I'm going to be talking with my dear friend, a very close friend of mine, Daniel Boardman. We're going to start a new series. We're going to call it Uh-Oh, Canada.
Uh-oh, Canada. Yeah, that sounds good. I like that. I like that a lot. So you guys stay on the line. I'm going to just end out the stream here for everybody. Thanks for coming out. This is amazing. It's probably one of the better streams that I've ever done. Just the level of conversation, fantastic. New information that I never heard myself. And obviously I'm bringing new information to the guests out there, everybody who's listening in. So, of course, we'll see you guys all on Tuesday. Monday's a holiday. I'm going to enjoy it with my family. I hope you all do yourselves. So we'll see you all then. Everybody, keep on trucking.